Call to order the New King County Board of Supervisors, January 26, 2022 work session to order. Ms. Watkins, will you call the roll?
Mr. Evelyn?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page?
Here.
Mr. Steers?
Here.
And Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
Good morning. Happy New Year to everyone. We've got a pretty big agenda this morning, so we'll get started first with the reassessment update. Commissioner of Revenue. Good morning.
Right, so I have a few hazards, but most of that's going to be for your reading later. So I'll just hand that over to Rodney. And there are some extra copies here, Rodney. So these are bound, one of each top, one of the bound. Thank you. I need it. Okay.
Just for the
I'm
people at
usually
home.
loud enough, but okay. So my staff and I completed the reassessment on December 28th, 2021, as required by law to have it done before the first of the year. The total value of the county is now $4.8,310,281. The new taxable value is $4.3 billion to 4.326,466,381. It represents a 9.27% increase over the prior year. As required by the Code of Virginia 58.13321, if our taxable value increases by more than 1%, the rate must be equalized. The 2021 real estate tax rate was 79 cents. The equalized rate is 66. What this represents for most people is less than a $50 difference in their tax bill. Equalization of the tax rate equalizes the amount of tax as well. It's not the same for everybody because everybody's properties do not increase or appreciate at the same rate. But 66%, most of the remaining 34% are probably new construction, so they would be compared to land last year and zero improvement value. So those people that experience a larger increase primarily have some sort of new construction, something they added in the last year, which 2021 was a phenomenal real estate year for New King County, if everybody was watching. 723 homes sold in 2021, compared to 468 in the 2019 reassessment. $365,000 is our new median sale compared to 290 in prior years. 611 new homes were built in the last 2 years. 641 new parcels compared to 446 in the last reassessment and 457, representing a very large increase in the new construction. Over $98 million in new construction alone last year. Single-family dwellings, non-commercial properties. Our commercial is not keeping up pace with the residential. A commercial value used to be about 13% of the total value. It's now sitting at about 10.87, leaving the residential and agricultural properties to be about 89.13% of the total. Notices will be mailed today. So that's the question. So they went to production last night and they'll be in the mail and postmarked today. And the deadline for our residents to appeal will be March 4th, 2022. So they will have from now until the end of, or the beginning of March to apply for appeal if they do not agree with their reassessments. In the bound copy is the full biennial report, which breaks down many more factors that went into the reassessment. It is about 14 pages and is very comprehensive. But there are 3 pages that I did hand out separately that are more relative to what's going on right now. There is a sample in there for your review of what the appeal notice apps looks like for the residents. This is a sample, it's made up. And also a sample of the appeal form. At this point, are there any questions that I can answer regarding the reassessment?
I know that we have met, your staff and county staff and myself and Ms. Page met with you all. Maybe could you go over what we're doing to try to get the communication out? Because this is going to be a huge, I mean, since I've been on the board, 79 cents to 66 cents. That's the biggest equalization rate
It's
I've ever seen.
unprecedented.
So I think we, on both sides, wanted to get everything out, communicated well before. So maybe
Absolutely.
You could go
So
over
we're going over some extra things. By law, these notices are mailed U.S. mail, regular mail. And I had some concerns to make sure that everybody, number one, knows that they are being mailed. We have put reassessment ads in the paper notifying people that they will be mailed today. And we will run those for the next few weeks. We are also putting things out on the county Facebook page to notify and send links to the appeal page or information. We have a lot of resources available for individuals that wish to appeal or have questions just about their reassessment in general. So we probably have about 20 different documents out there, how to understand your reassessment notice, how to understand your property record card, so we're going to be doing some segments out on, I'm filming something today, just kind of getting the general out, and also we want people to know if they don't receive them in the next few weeks, they can contact our office for a duplicate, which we can email or try to mail again. We do recommend the easiest way. We do expect call volume to be heavy because it is a large increase in assessed values, but we don't control the market, and the market is unprecedented. We are not the only community in this. If anybody's been following articles across the state, they are all dealing with unprecedented market changes in 2021. So we're not alone, but we are trying to reach out to the community to make sure they know they're coming and what to expect when they do receive it.
Okay, thanks. Board members have any questions? Ms.
I
Page?
do. And the other thing, and to make sure that I think some of our residents are confused about, they don't know what the equalization. They don't know what that is versus what we said in the reassessment and all of that. So, maybe a short definition so they'll know the difference in the two rates.
Sure, thank you. So the state code indicates that a reassessment cannot be used for the purposes of increasing your tax dollars, your tax amount in any community. So there's a safeguard. If the assessments, the total assessed value is more than 1% than the prior years, you equalize. So what does equalize mean? That rate, the new rate, must be reduced to produce the same amount of money that we produced last year. So saying that we're almost 20% higher in assessments, you would expect about a 20% decrease in the rate. And so our new total of $4.3 billion compared to last year's total of $3.5 billion, we generated 3.2, or $26 million, a little over $26 million in taxes from real estate. The equalized rate at 66 cents produces $25,952,000. We can't go to 67 because that would put us over the $26,048,000. So we're right in between. So it is a little bit less actually than the prior year because we cannot go over 1% of the prior year. So this new total, even though it's $1 billion more in value, is not going to produce any more tax at the 66 cents. Also, if you look at their notice in the proposed assessment, it shows the levy and the equalized levy and the amount it will produce. In this particular instance or this sample, the assessment went up almost $74,000. But with the equalized levy, the taxes changed about $50. So, or 1.83%. I mean, some people will be even, their equalized levy will be less because their property didn't appreciate at the average rate. But when you think about it, 66%, if people look at that equalized levy compared to what they paid the prior years, which are on there shall be, for most people, 66%, a very little change in their tax bill. It could be a little less, it could be a little more with that equalized rate. And again, when I analyzed the remaining, the majority of those were new parcels or new construction. So if you built a house last year, it was prorated. You only paid for a portion of the year, and you paid all year on your land. And so, yeah, that may look like a big jump, but it's the first year you're paying for the whole year for a house. So, but the law doesn't allow me to say, hey, but you built a new house. We still have to show that percentage of change.
Thank you.
Is that sufficient? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Ms. Lockman.
I'm just kind of curious when we equalize the rate. We're looking at equalizing the total, correct?
Total.
So, in essence, we don't capture any additional revenue for the increase in the number of homes and all that stuff. So we're kind of taking a step back when we equalize because we're not actually going to recognize the additional revenue that would have come in from those new homes.
No, so that's not exactly true. Okay, so the equalization goes on the prior taxable value, and the state goes further to say it's apples to apples. So if I didn't tax your house last year, it's not in the equalized formula. So all new construction and all new parcels that did not get taxed the prior year are not in that equalization.
Gotcha.
So we aren't going backwards, but everyone who was taxed last year compared to their values this year are used in the equalization. On page 11 of your biennial report, it breaks that down, what gets subtracted and added. Exemptions, for instance, our elderly, disabled, and veteran programs, and different things get new construction, new parcels, AFD exemption. So when you want to really look at it, the numbers are on page 11 of the report.
Thank you.
And also, interestingly enough, on page 10 of your report, I did a little bit of math to calculate and adjust for inflation. So while overall assessments have increased, our tax amount has remained stable. Our budget has been over the past decade. In 2013, the total tax levy was $20 million. And a population of 18,429 people. But adjusting that levy with inflation, that works out to be about $1,200, $1,300 a resident. Now you take today's population estimate of 23,000 and the current projected levy of $28,500,000, that's about, if we said they were paying the 1,300, they would have produced 29 million. So it's actually a negative 4.2% per person in the county, not per household, per person, when you adjust the total over. So honestly, the budget has not escalated as fast as our residency.
Anybody else? Well, I think it would be fair to say we're probably going to be getting some phone calls as board members when this comes
Yes.
out. So I think for information for our board, when we get those calls, if there's going to be some factual errors, some different errors, we need to send those to the commissioner's office. It's not our job to.
You can't help them.
We don't assess them. If we have to raise the taxes when that time comes, then that falls on us. But
Yeah, that's not my job.
we just want to inform everybody if we're getting calls, we need to send them to the commissioner's office, because I mean, you get a lot of factual, stuff happens, square footage or something. You can fix that right away on the phone, right?
Factual errors do not require an appeal. Absolutely, and can be reported anytime. There's no deadline on factual errors. However, if they want to know if they do have a factual error, the sooner they notify us. It is a computer-assisted model. There can be errors. We do the best that we can, and I feel pretty good about our data, but that does not mean that, something historically could be wrong in there.
Right. So I just want to.
I would appreciate that the notices contain all the information that they need. Myself and my office, we are committed to this process and making this process as fair and equitable to the taxpayers. And, anybody who calls who doesn't agree with their assessed value, we encourage them to appeal and go through the process, because either they are right and we will correct it, or we will show them where we got the data for that assessment.
You've been doing it for a long time, and I don't,
This is an unprecedented amount, though.
Right.
That's what, and we are concerned that, everybody does receive them. And I would appreciate, as you have suggested, that the board encourage people to follow the directions on their notice, because that is the only legal way they can appeal.
Well, I'd just like to thank you. I'd like to thank Shannon and Krista for getting this information out, to the public, so we're all on one accord
Right.
when this stuff hits. That was the main thing.
Right. Well, thank you. There's a lot of data in there for you. If any of you have questions after you go through that, please feel free to reach me as well.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Heritage Public Library update.
Good morning, and thank you for seeing us this morning. I am going to give my chair to Kathy Willis, the financial officer, in case there's some numbers questions, but I'll be sitting back here if you need me.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us. We just wanted to stop in this morning, not take up too much of your time, and do a quick review of our FY23 budget request. This year, our request is for $218,000 for FY23. This is an increase of approximately $39,000 over our FY22 request. We had requested, I believe, 234 in FY23. The actual allocation was just under $179,000. Now, there's a few reasons for this increase of $39,000. Some have to do with grant opportunities. We're not sure what will be available to us in FY23. The other thing is we had payroll protection plan money that was available to us this year that will not be offered in FY23. And one of the big reasons is going to be the increase in minimum wage on January 1 of 2023. And this will impact a large amount of our library assistants. The other thing I'd like to point out is that we rely on our local funding for 95% of our payroll. So it is very important to us to have the support that we've had from the counties. And we appreciate what you've done for us in the past and hope that you will consider this request as you move forward. You have a copy of the FY23 request in front of you and the FY22. When you've had a chance to review them, if you have any questions, you're free to get in contact with me or our finance officer, Kathy Wills. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. If you have any questions now, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Anybody have any questions? So I'm just looking real quick here. I just got one quick. So payroll expenses, we were at 141 last year. Am I reading this wrong? And going to 333. Was that both? Is that both Charles City and New Kent at 333?
Yeah, the 332 for the FY23 request, yes, that includes both Charles City and New Kent. And then down at the bottom of that sheet, you'll see where.
Okay, 200.
Pardon me?
So we're going to. Well, I'm just looking at. Okay. And how much of that is due to the? Can you break it out to what the minimum wage?
The minimum wage portion accounts for approximately $18,000 of the increase that we're asking for.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you. I just want to let you know that my family, we went in there, got our passports the other day. Very smooth process. So
thank you.
A lot of positive feedback from that, from all around the county. So
good. Glad to hear that.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. Next item, appropriation of emergency sewer repairs. Mr. Lang.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've come to ask for an additional appropriation from the utility fund. We have exhausted our maintenance and repair line items for the county sewer collection and reclaimed water system. Typically, we budget for the average scenario, and I think over the past, during this fiscal year and over the past calendar year, we've kind of seen what's approaching the worst case scenario. So far in FY22.
Mike, can you turn your mic?
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Do I need to start over? So we're asking for we're asking for $125,000 to cover the costs incurred and to finish out, the remaining 5 months of this fiscal year.
All right, any questions? Was this Patriots Landing?
We had a force main leak in Patriots
I know
Landing.
you had one there.
That's right along the lake, the shore of the lake. That's in people's backyards, so that that can't sit, that can't wait.
Yeah.
Several of these are in Brickshire sewer pump failures, and again, what we consider to be the I won't say the homeowner, but the builder tying into the county side of the sewer system improperly. We take measures now to prevent that, but a lot of these were, have been 15, 20 years old. So you just get ground movement and settling where the excavation was, and Schedule 40 PVC is pretty brittle, breaks pretty easily when you have that weight on it. So.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Ms. Steers?
Mr. Lang, has nothing to do with this, but has the reclaimed water been dumped in the Pamunkey from this past year? Has that already been dumped?
Reclaimed water?
Right.
Well, we
Unused.
discharge to the Pamunkey regularly.
Right.
Reclaimed water goes to the customers.
Right.
So it's not reclaimed until it is sent to the customer.
Right.
So we don't, technically don't put reclaimed water in the in the Pamunkey. We put the plant effluent in the Pamunkey.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
That's enough said.
technical difference, but by law, even though it's all the same, treated the same, it's the same water. It's not, if it goes to reclaimed, it's not supposed to overflow. It's not supposed to make it to a waterway.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I believe we need a motion.
Yeah, if there's no other
and a
questions,
vote
I'll
again.
entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to authorize the supplemental appropriation of $125,000 from the utility fund balance to line item number 379-10600-403310.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Lang.
you. Thanks for your time.
Next item, funding appropriation for the Pinefork Park Maintenance Building.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You have before you a request, really a follow-up on an item that we have discussed previously as we've looked at various options for shelters at Pinefork Park. We are in the process of purchasing equipment for the maintenance of Pinefork Park. We have purchased equipment for the maintenance of Pinefork Park, and we are also preparing for the youth seasons that will be starting in the spring, where we know the youth leagues will have equipment that will need to be stored at Pinefork Park as well. We have discussed with you some options for a storage building, and we were asked to go back and take a look at some other options, more specifically a pre-manufactured building, which we have included in your packet. In your packet is a request to proceed with the purchase of a 24-foot by 25-foot metal maintenance building to be located at Pinefork Park. This building will be used to store our lawnmowers, our grass maintenance, field maintenance equipment, and also supplies as well, I believe, fertilizers, Roundup, things of that nature. I am requesting that the board appropriate $25,000 from our reserve for contingency fund to go towards the purchase and installation of this building. The actual purchase price is $15,330.65, which we've checked around in pricing. We believe that this is a fair price, a good price. But there is some site preparation that will be required and involved in the installation of this facility as well. Therefore, we're requesting $25,000.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm just looking at this proposal that you've got, and it says the installation surface is gravel.
Yes.
I think I remember y'all talking about bringing in pallets of materials that would be stored on the lean-to side of this thing. It's awfully difficult to move pallets in gravel without a forklift or something. If you're just using a pallet jack, it doesn't happen. Should we really, I'm not looking to spend more money, but should we be looking at the possibility of having a concrete pad for this surface instead of gravel, just for the functional use of the building?
A majority of the pallets that would be coming in are going to be, offloaded on a truck with what you would call an off-road forklift, and literally it's just a pallet of, it's called stay drive or something like that for the ball fields, where they could just throw it in there. I don't foresee us having to move pallets throughout the building and things like that. That's why we were going with gravel to try to keep the cost down and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to see this, because I think what was the original price that you and Kim had brought to the board?
Well,
it's like
there's
$150,000.
a big difference between the two buildings.
I know, but
this is a maintenance shed compared to
understand.
a maintenance building.
I understand, but price is right. Thank you.
Is that a motion then, Mr. Steers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I motion to appropriate $25,000 from the reserve for contingency fund for the purchase and installation of a maintenance building at Pinefork Park. Happily.
Thank you, Ms. Steers. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, Federal Disaster Recovery Fund appropriation for the New Kent County Airport. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Last fiscal year, we received funding from the Department of Aviation from their Federal Disaster Recovery Fund. We would like to use that funding for expenditures at New Kent Airport, and therefore we're requesting that those funds be appropriated. The expenditures will involve the replacement of a fuel pump at our fuel facilities, totaling $8,937.25, and also the replacement of a circuit board for our weather station at the airport, totaling $6,240 for a total of $15,177.25. And again, these are federal funds covering the cost, but in order for us to expend it and properly account for that, the board will need to appropriate the funding.
Any questions from Mr. Hathaway?
I was getting ready.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Page.
if there are no questions, I move to appropriate $11,915.96 from the Department of Urban Airport Maintenance line 280924 to 324200-2901 and $3,261.29 from the airport fund balance for a total of $15,177.25 to the airport repairs and maintenance fund for the purchase of a replacement fuel dispenser pump and a replacement of a failed voice interface computer circuit board for the New Kent Airport.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Steers? Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Item 6, FY22 interdepartment budget transfer. Mr. Smolnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This request is to fund some engineering work to spur economic development activity here in the county. The requested funds will go through the EDA and to pay for the engineering services by an engineering firm in the Richmond area.
Any questions for Mr. Smollett? None, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to transfer $140,000 from the reserve for contingency to the Economic Development Authority.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next is the 2023-27 Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Hathaway. Is Ted going to be here?
He's on his way, yes.
Do you want to wait for him, or you want to?
I think we're good.
Okay.
This part, this will flow into the next part, but he'll be able to jump right in.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Last week, the Planning Commission considered the proposed FY23-27 capital improvement plan for the county. They reviewed and considered and conducted a public hearing on my recommendation for our plan for next year. The capital improvements plan for FY23 projects involve a total of $20,652,864, which is a big number, but the majority of that consists of 3 large capital projects, which I'll go over briefly. To fund that amount, that $20 million, $3,424,000 would come from our CIP cash reserves. $100,000 would come from proffers. Federal and state grants total $1,368,000, and then debt service would total $15,760,500 of new debt service, which we do have a plan to fund that, and I will talk about that just a little bit later. In your packet, on the first page, you have a breakdown of requests by departments. And I'm going to go over each request very quickly. Starting with the airport, there is an obstruction removal project plan totaled at $600,000. This is really an FAA requirement. We need to have a certain clearance for our runway landings and takeoffs. So therefore, we do need to go off-site and clear some trees and top some trees as well so we can have the proper clearance. We estimate that cost being $600,000. The good thing about this is 90% of the cost is covered by the FAA, 8% of the cost is covered by the Virginia Department of Aviation, and therefore the county covers 2%, approximately 2% of the cost. The impact of fund balance for this project is estimated at $12,000. We also have a project for the design of additional hangar spaces at the airport. It is my goal that the airport become a self-sufficient operation, and we've been working towards that over the past 5 years. We're at a point where our hangars are full. So in order to create new revenues, additional revenues there, we need new hangars, and we believe with the demand in the market, we can fill them up as soon as we build them. So we are looking at constructing additional hangars, and this will help us make the airport self-sufficient as well. We do anticipate some state and federal money with this project as well, and we estimate that the county's local contribution would be $30,000. Moving to administration is the renovation of the historic schools west wing, which is the original portion of the former New Kent High School. That project is totaled at just under $7 million. Now, a portion of that cost involves relocating the school maintenance building and demolishing the existing structure. Our goal with the renovation of the historic school building is to make that a community center, a reception hall, a place where groups can rent that space out for community meetings, and dedicated senior space for our seniors in this community. With all those uses involved, we're definitely going to need more parking out there, and we've all driven by there on an weekday afternoon when the youth are practicing sports, football and baseball, and parking is difficult there. So by relocating the school maintenance building will give us opportunities for additional parking. I am also recommending a gateway signage project to the tune of $60,000 for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is consistent with the goals and objectives of our newly adopted strategic plan for the county, which that is a specific goal in the strategic plan. But number two, our existing signs around the county with the burgundy signs with the acorns, they are in need of some repair, and some of them actually need to be replaced or at least repainted. So if we're going to put money into those existing signs, we might as well update that with our new logo and our new brand. All right. Moving down to the building department, they are requesting $8,913 for a sliding filing system. We all know space is at a minimum in the administration building, and that's definitely the case in the building department in their file room. This rolling file cabinet will allow them to have additional space for the storage of building construction plans and permit applications. Next item is fire and rescue. $4.4 million is, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's Fire Station 2, which we're not saying no to Fire Station 2. We're just postponing that a year. And I believe we'll be in a better position to fund that without utilizing debt service if we push Fire Station 2 back 1 year. I believe we can cash fund the project. Therefore, I did not recommend that for next year. But I am recommending the construction and replacement of Fire Station 4 in Lenexa, and we have that projected at $3,824,000. And a little later on in the agenda, we will discuss the location. Under item 9, we will discuss the location of the proposed fire station number 4. We're also looking at the purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus. Even though we're requesting the project total is $612, we believe that the lion's share of this can be paid for through grants. Therefore, the county share, which would be our 10% match, at $61,234. Ambulance replacement. We're also seeking grant opportunities to purchase a new ambulance. Our match requirement would be $76,000 as well. With the purchase of the ambulance, we have an opportunity to apply for this grant, and please correct me, Chief, if I'm wrong, apply for this grant within this fiscal year. We have the funds in our capital reserves to cover our matching requirement in this fiscal year. We would like the board to consider allowing us to submit in this year's application. In that way, too, if we're not successful in this year's application, we also have another year to apply for that funding. We're still using the same funds from the same account. We will just be making the purchase early if we're successful in this year's application. Yes.
Morning.
Morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Really what that is we'd be still utilizing, it's basically to apply for the grant. There's two cycles. There's one here in the spring that kicks off in February. If approved and if awarded, the funds wouldn't be awarded to us to July 1 in the new fiscal year anyway. So there's two opportunities in this fiscal year. This first one in the spring and the second one in the fall, which would push it out. You all know kind of the automobile industry right now, it's very hard to even think of a chassis. So we're trying to get ahead of the game a little bit here, but no funds would be expended until July 1 if we are awarded. It's just trying to get the permission to write this ahead of time moving forward.
And if you're okay with that, we will proceed. As you're aware, our finance policy requires any grant over $50,000 requires board approval or the consensus of the board. So if the board is okay. 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 All right. Support fire apparatus is the next item at $140,000. And I think I kind of got the ambulance and this confused too. This, because of the out time, and this item is a new SUV vehicle, and is a brush truck involved in that? Two SUVs. The lead times on, as you all know, with new vehicles and custom vehicles, which is even longer, 6 to 9 months. We would like to, the dealer that we're working with said that if we can submit a letter of intent now for the purchase, he'll make the order now. We wouldn't have to pay till next fiscal year, but we would cut down on that lead time. But in order for us to submit a letter of intent, we would want some comfort that this is an expenditure that you would support in next fiscal years, and would like some feedback from you there. But we are being told 6 to 9 months lead time.
And what is it? I mean, how many?
It's two SUVs. Now, there is some customization with these to meet the fire needs and emergency service needs. That adds to the lead time, but these would be the purchase of two new SUVs. I believe Tahoes, or I'm not sure which ones we're looking at. Okay.
Are these replacements?
These are replacements. These are not new vehicles. They're replacements. $140,000, which is about $70 a piece, which is currently the exact same that we pay for our police cruisers as well. So.
How many miles are on the ones that are being replaced, or what's the need for a replacement?
I believe the first one's 150,000, and the second one is approaching, it'll be when it's all said and done, about 115 when it's done, and well over 10 years. It beats the
What's the feeling from the board?
Don't ask me, my car got almost 300,000 miles.
You know, and we've all talked about the replacement policy, but it does exceed the 100,000 mile policy. I will say with these vehicles, even though it just has a little over 100,000, they do idle a lot. So it's a little more wear and tear.
How much maintenance have you had to do on them lately? Are they still in good shape? No.
Yeah, obviously we do the maintenance, normal maintenance on them, as we do. One of the two is really starting to tick underneath the hood. If that's kind of the first, these things are beat. You know, when you punch on them, and they're not your average car. But unfortunately, the second one is just high mileage and you know the starting to shake a little bit that normally that it wouldn't do. So there's no big maintenance cost on them. You know, it's the oil, it's changing out the filters. We're doing that normally on a normal basis, but it's kind of that you know, from 0 to 60 speeds that we encourage, maybe faster. That's a safety issue that becomes.
I'm not going to comment on it because the deputy is here.
They're faster.
I mean, that is something I think we need to. I mean, the cost of vehicles are going up.
They are.
And we're still at the. I mean, if you're paying more for it, you ought to be able to get more miles out of it. I mean, that's what.
Yeah. In this case here, in reference to Ms. Page's, looking like the chassis right now, or the truck itself, is about 45,000. That is up about 7,000 from this time last year of what the new percentage increase. Then the other half of that is kind of the build out for what Mr. Hathaway stated for the command consoles and everything, and that stuff is going up as well.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be wise for us to get ahead of the curve and go ahead and get them on order. It is taking forever to get vehicles, and you know, for them to have to do the customization as well, it's going to take more time.
How about one?
Please tell me they're not electric.
No, sir.
Good.
I will refrain from any further comment.
Up to the board.
Well, I agree. You know, if it's going to take 7 to 8 months to get it, go ahead and put the order in. You need it.
And really, it's just a letter of intent. Basically, if something falls through at the budget time, the gentleman said that they'll sell like hotcakes because you can't get them. So for us, it's a no liability. For us, we're just putting the intent in that we're going to purchase this when the funding's available, and if the money is not there, then they'll take them back and sell them.
They won't buy 2 used ones.
They'll be reserved. The used ones.
I guess it could. I guess it's a consensus then.
Thank you.
And the last item for fire and rescue really is intended to assist with our maintenance costs right now for our fire engines, because we don't have the proper lift stations at the vehicle maintenance garage. We're having to get them serviced off-site by the private mechanics. We're proposing that we purchase the proper lifts to go in our vehicle maintenance facilities so that we can work on our own vehicles, and there would be definitely a savings involved with that. Moving on to yes.
So, it's because of the weight, right?
I believe it is because of the weight. Yes.
I mean, I'm pretty strict.
Yeah.
It had to be because of the weight.
Yeah, I mean, they're much heavier than the school buses.
Yeah,
I know they currently lift school.
This is additional pair of lifts for our tandem axles. We have 2 tandem axle trucks in the fleet. And the school bus garage, who doesn't charge us labor on all of this stuff, basically this is kind of our agreement. You buy these and labor continues to be free. We send those trucks off to somewhere that has that lift capability when it needs maintenance right now. So to get those trucks off a lift, they can't do it in a school bus garage just because of the additional tandem axle on the back.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yes.
$25,663 for the
Yeah.
lifts.
And that's the same lifts that communicate with their existing lifts over there. You have to have the same models to communicate, so they're all lifting at the same time.
Is that insulation as well?
This quote came from Ron over there, so my assumption is he needs everything. Ron at the shop, I'm assuming he's got everything that's needed over there. I don't know the answer exactly to your question, but
Okay.
my assumption is it came from the shop.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Moving to general services, courthouse HVAC replacement. That's not being recommended for funding for next fiscal year only because we have sufficient funding in this current fiscal year, and we're currently working with the judge to prepare a invitation for bids to put that out to bid to replace the HVAC system next door in the courthouse. Loader backhoe purchase of $145,000 is being recommended. This piece of equipment is crucial to the operation of our 618 refuse site. It pushes our brush so that we can have additional capacity at our brush collection site. We actually even use it to compact the materials in the bins so that we can get additional usage from them and get the most out of our pools. So when this equipment goes down, and unfortunately our current piece does, and it's going down all too often, usually we have to rent a piece of equipment so we can keep operations going at 618. And we're also looking at replacing the sheds at our Route 634 and Route 647 refuse site for a total of $13,000. Moving to IT, which we have a big project here, and this is the upgrade of our data networking infrastructure in our administration campus. We're basically replacing equipment that has outlived its lifespan and outlived the point where we can get warranties on this material too, but it's crucial to our network. It's a big cost, but luckily we only have to do this once every 5 to 7 years. Next, going to Parks and Recreation. Projects being proposed for funding is the $149,000 for the paving of the trail at Pinefork Park. We've been very pleased with the amount of traffic that facility has gotten since it's opened last year. Next item is Warrenod Nature Trail and Park. $55,000 for improvements to that trail facility as well. And I am proposing $38,000 to replace the messaging board at Quinton Community Center to move to a electronic messaging board as opposed to right now the board where you physically place letters on. We'll be able to change the message from our cell phones and from our computer, and we'll have better control of the messaging that is placed on those boards as well. Moving to planning, no projects proposed for planning, but we do have placeholders for proffers that we currently receive from the farms of New Kent. Yes.
Going back to Parks and Rec,
Yes.
you're suggesting the lighting too, right? Did I miss that? 900,000.
No, I'm not proposing that for next fiscal year. But again, that's another project that I believe if we push out 1 year, we'll be able to cash fund that.
Okay.
And we'll not need to borrow.
All right.
Okay. And then you have a list of projects from the school board, the annual purchases of new buses. You know, the thing about buses is they're getting more and more expensive each year. I remember when I first started my first budget, I think a bus was costing us about 80 to 85,000, and now mainly due to state and federal requirements, that cost is 119,000 per bus. And they are proposing to purchase 5 new buses. They're also looking at replacement of a section of the high school roof, which I drilled them on this one because that building is not that old. But apparently they are having issues with a section of the roof and it is not covered by warranty. Our Chromebook cost, and that's for all of our middle school and high school students to receive Chromebooks to take home, in our elementary school students to receive Chromebooks as well. They don't take them home though. That cost is $100,000. Paving the parking lots and driveways district-wide is estimated at $100,000. Design costs for mechanical renovation systems updates, and that's the HVAC system at the middle school. That seems to be an ongoing project at the middle school. But at the middle school, there are 35, I believe that's correct, separate HVAC units, which is unusual in a design. And I think it's good and bad. It's good that if one unit goes down, you don't have to shut down schools and you can, confine that to one area of the building. But it is unusual for the number of HVAC units that they have at that facility. They are looking at replacing an aging system also at George Watkins Elementary School. And then there's another middle school HVAC replacement project of $60,000. They are requesting $32,282 in the purchase of school vehicles, non-bus vehicles, which is unfortunate because normally when we purchase new sheriff's vehicles, we transfer the old vehicles to the schools and they utilize those vehicles. So they really haven't had a need in the past to purchase many school vehicles other than buses. But since we've moved to SUVs now, apparently there's state policy that the schools cannot transfer students in SUVs. I think it's an outdated old requirement from when SUVs used to tip over, or there was concerns that they would tip. But the way these vehicles are made today, it probably needs to be looked at again by the Department of Education.
Did they ever look at the parking lot at a school with
I agree. I agree. They also have some district-wide roof maintenance, just patching funds that they're requesting of $25,000 just in case they experience a leak. They have funding to address that. Also included in this, even though it's titled roof maintenance, I believe they also use this for when painting is needed district-wide within any of their buildings. And then they have a miscellaneous maintenance and improvement request of $25,000 as well. And then moving to the Sheriff's Department. What's being recommended is a construction of a new animal shelter to replace our existing animal shelter at Route 618. For those of you that haven't been following, the sheriff is organizing a tour to look at some of the newer facilities in the region so that we can get an idea of our needs for this new facility. The estimated cost is $5 million for that construction. The site is still to be determined. We have some options that we're currently working on. So we're still finalizing the site for this facility. Other item that's being recommended is an upgrade to the dispatch office. Really kind of a reconfiguration as well, hopefully to get a little more space in there and to update the furniture and equipment. That project is estimated at $134,000, and we also are requesting $38,000 for the replacement of the camera on the special ops vehicle, which has outlived its warranty and coverage. Yes.
The tactical vehicle.
Yes.
400,000. Did we skip that?
Well, that's not being proposed for funding. We could not fit that within the available capital funds for next fiscal year. Although, but I will say, you know, the sheriff has gone back and looked at that number of 400,000, which originally was just a placeholder while he was getting more cost. And he has shared with me some new quotes, and I believe the lowest quote was about $180,000 for the purchase of an armored vehicle. And that's what a tactical vehicle is, basically, an armored vehicle. As we work with the sheriff on this, we may be able, as the price is coming down on this, to present some additional options, some other options to you in the months out that wouldn't involve the FY23 capital budget. One thing that I've had discussions with the sheriff, and one of those options are, a couple months ago, we discussed the opioid settlement money that we would be receiving. That could cover the cost of the purchase of the tactical vehicle using the new numbers that the sheriffs have provided. I probably won't explain it right, but in situations, well, there was an example that was shared with me of a domestic dispute where there was weapons involved, and it would have been nice to have utilized that vehicle to get closer to the building and rescue, basically, the occupants in the house. But
the problem we're running into with the state is their limited resources, that it's hours away at times because it's servicing multiple different jurisdictions throughout the division. First Division is one of the busiest regions for the state, but it does allow more access for our emergency response team as far as accessing buildings, facilities, trying to get people out of a situation or get our responders, you know, God forbid if we had a responder go down, it would allow us more access to help retrieve an injured deputy from that situation.
All right.
all right, and I won't go over the rest of the requests. You have them before you, but the rest of the requests are vehicle replacements, and as you know, we do have a replacement policy. Also, computer replacements as well, which we replace all of our computers every 5 years, which is the longest term that we can get to warranty our computers. I just want to wrap up by going back to the 3 capital projects, the historic school renovation, the animal shelter, and Station 4 replacement. That's a little over $16 million in projects and that we would have to borrow for. We anticipate the annual debt service to be approximately $1 million, just over $1 million. And I'd like to remind you that in this current budget, we did increase the mills tax by 2%. That generated about $600,000, $591,000 is estimated in additional tax revenue that we made the decision that we would set it aside for capital projects. So that's an available pot that you would have to cover the debt service. With the new reassessments, the value of 1 penny on the tax rate is just over $400,000. So those two funding sources could make up the required amount to cover the debt service for the 3 projects. We also have invited Davenport and Associates here today to look at some financing options because we'd like for you to consider moving forward sooner than later on the financing of these projects. Reading all the reports from the feds, we anticipate that interest hikes will start next month, start in March. We're not in February yet, but they'll start in March. So it's going to get more expensive for us to borrow. Larry ran some numbers, and I thank him for doing that. He's not here. Larry Clark, a 1% increase, 1% increase on an interest rate is an annual additional cost of about $92,000. So we'd like to take advantage of the low interest rate market that we're experiencing right now and proceed sooner than later with the financing of those projects. Now, we know that would mean a commitment would have to be made for those projects, but and we don't have to make that decision today, but it is something that we would like the board to think about moving now if these are projects that the board are comfortable with proceeding with. And that leads us into the next agenda topic.
All right. All right. Item 8, potential borrowing. Mr. Cole.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ben Wilson is with me as well. We're passing around a memo that may have made it into your agenda packet as well, but just in case, I have a hard copy.
How about, Ted, can you cut that one off and cut, oh, you got it.
Is that on now?
Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
All right. Red is on, right? Okay. All right. So the memo's coming around. It should be identical if there was one in your agenda packet, but we wanted to just cover this and following up on what Rodney had discussed. This is dealing with the potential to go out and solicit funding proposals for these 3 projects. The renovation of the historic school at $7 million. We talk a little bit about it there. That's really pulled from your CIP pages, which are in the back of this packet. The animal shelter at an estimated cost of $5 million, and fire station number 4, estimated cost of $4 million. In talking through this with staff, we sort of identified 2 options that could be considered for funding these projects. The first would be putting a request for proposal out to banks. We're prepared to do that as early as tomorrow if you all want to proceed, and I'll explain what proceeding means. And soliciting proposals from them to finance up to $16 million for these 3 projects. It would be potentially, if we did it, with a bank through the IDA or the EDA. We've done that type of financing before. And it would be secured by, more than likely secured by the historic school complex. I think we have enough value in that complex, plus what is being added to that building, that it would serve as collateral for the loan. So it would be secured by real estate or those assets. There would be, ultimately, if we moved forward, there would be a county board approval, perhaps 2 different meetings, and an IDA or EDA approval. So that is an option. we're prepared to put that RFP out, solicit proposals. Those would be non-binding. In other words, if the proposals come back and you're not ready to move forward with these projects, or you want to consider moving forward with one or two of them, but not all three, or nothing at all, you will have options. So what we'll have in hand, ideally, is firm proposals from banks to fund it with all the terms and conditions. We can assess those, present those to you all, and at that point make a decision, do we want to move forward or not? And not moving forward is absolutely an option. You will not have incurred any costs or obligations for those banks.
So you will present it as, if you finance on one of them, the interest rates would be this. So we have like three different, so we can pick and choose.
We have some options. That's right. That would be our proposal, is to write that RFP in a way that, it's up to $16 million for these three projects, but we'd like to consider if you want to consider a lesser amount or a smaller subset of those three. So we'll make it such that the proposals come back and you've got some options. The schedule that is attached to the memo, we actually revisited it once the memo went out and accelerated it a little bit in the interest of time. So what we would propose to do is get the RFP out, if you want us to, and bring the responses back on February 16th. That way the RFP would be out there for about 3 weeks, which is appropriate, gives banks time to do their work, and then be in a position maybe at your retreat, which I think is the 18th, to talk about what we received, but absent that, would plan to come and present the results of that to y'all, I believe, at your February 23rd business meeting. And at that point, you could make a decision how, if at all, to proceed. And if you wanted to, things would unfold from there with probably a March 14th meeting with you all, a March 17th EDA meeting, and we could be in a position to close later in March. The other option that is out there is to participate in one of the state programs called VRA, Virginia Resources Authority. You all have used them before, primarily for utility projects, but they do other projects. They don't do schools, but I believe all of these projects, even though we're talking about the historic school, it's really used for other purposes. So VRA should be able to accommodate all of these projects. The issue with them is they're a little bit later on a timetable. So what we might suggest is doing the RFP, being in a position to bring those results back and assess them. At the same time, put our name into VRA, which again, there's no cost and it's non-binding, and preserve that option. They need an application by February 4th. It's relatively straightforward to submit it. If we decide the banks look good and we want to move in that direction later in February, we can always remove our application from VRA. If the bank proposals don't come back exactly where we wanted them to, or we're not excited about them, but you still want to move forward, VRA would be an option. And if you decide to do nothing, both the bank and the VRA can be stopped. So RFP out relatively quickly, bring those back, put in a placeholder application for VRA so we don't lose that option, and then we assess February 16th in that time frame over the next week following February 16th to determine what we want to do, and perhaps give you a little bit of that at your retreat, but certainly would plan to have it ready to share with you at your February 23rd meeting. That's the basic schedule. If you went with VRA, things would go into April, May, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. Rodney did mention estimated debt service. If you go to page 2 of our memo, you'll see it laid out. We've looked at both a 15-year payback and a 20-year payback. I think all of these assets probably you could get comfortable with paying them back over 20 years based on their useful life, but we would propose to ask for both just to see. And we've assumed for working planning purposes on the 15-year payback a 2.5% interest rate. I think that's a reasonable rate. We might find we're a little better than that. Could be a little higher. Banks, as I think you've seen before, can have a pretty wide range from low to high. We have seen rates moving higher over the last couple of month. And as Rodney said, I think the common thinking is rates will continue to rise, but things could disrupt that. Generally, when we see rates rising, it's not sort of smooth. It tends to be kind of sawtooth. So we'll see what comes back. But we are seeing rates generally moving higher. I believe the 250 for 15 years and the 3% for 20 years are reasonable planning rates. Maybe we can do a little better. But you can see for each project and in the aggregate, which could be as much as $16 million, what the annual debt service would be. The 20-year amortization gets us to that roughly $1.1 million a year in total. $1,080,000 is about where it lands. And I think in discussing, and Rodney alluded to it, discussing all of this with staff, I feel like they've got, between other budgetary things that are going on, and you mentioned, I guess, the meals tax, that you could have that covered. And if we did it, the payments would start in FY23, so your next budget. Let me stop there for a moment. That's the general fund discussion. Any questions on any of that?
Go ahead. You might.
Have you looked into what it's going to do to our ratios and performance with our?
Yeah, and, so we've got the debt policies, and we've got the payback plan, and so the payback plan I think has largely been addressed in that between some revenues you've got in your budget already, including the meals tax. I think you're close to having $1 million a year accounted for. And then on the policies, it's going to be tight. I think the 15 versus 20 year may be worth looking at when the bids come back, because there is one policy in particular, your debt service to expenditures. How much annual payment are you making as a percent of your budget? That one's pretty tight. The 15 versus the 20 year the 20 year might help it look a little better. The 15 year might push you a little above that policy. And I think that's something, that one will be tight. I think that's something when we report back on the bank RFP process, we circle back to those so you can see those at the same time.
So you'll be bringing that,
Yes.
those ratios and
Yes.
policies before we make a decision, because
At the same meeting.
we don't want to be raising taxes to pay debt off like some other localities have done.
Right, understand.
Illegally.
So when we bring those proposals back and discuss them again, maybe at the retreat, but on February 23rd, not only the proposals, but what they would look like on your debt ratios and your debt policies, and tighten up things a little bit on the repayment plan.
So don't we have some loans that we should be paying off soon? I.e. the high school maybe, or the park or
I believe
something?
we have about 5 or 6 more years on the high school loan. And once that's paid off, our debt service is really going to drop drastically, because that's a big portion of our current debt
Yeah, that
service.
was a 06-07 loan, and I think it was about a 21-year term.
Yeah.
So we're 27-ish, I think, 28. Yeah,
And-
I think it's 28.
And also, I would be interested if you could send it to me, what it would look like if we borrowed $20 million.
Okay. And something I'm going to bring up here in a moment is utilities, but the $20 million would be general fund, tax support. Okay. And that if we do want to move forward with an RFP and there's that consensus, we could certainly bump up the amount requested or add another amount requested. You know, some banks might look at it differently, 16 versus 20. So if that's an option that you want to assess in the RFP, it's easy to add, just need a little direction on that.
Just one other, I guess this is more than just a half the way. I can understand where probably get the estimates for the animal shelter and the fire station, but the $7 million, where did the estimate of the sixth floor school?
Back in 2018, I believe, we hired Hopkin Associates to do some preliminary architectural work, and we used his work to come up with the estimate.
So I'm assuming you inflated his number a
we
little
did.
bit. Okay.
Yes, we did.
All right. Anybody else?
So let me shift gears to the utility. Yeah. So in our one more handout coming your way. This one is not in your packet. As we do normally in your retreat, we update our annual utility model. I think all of you have seen that, and it talks about projections for revenues and expenses and debt coverage and all your other key metrics for your utility bond program. The project that has sort of been garnering most discussion here in the near term is this solid stabilization, dewatering, and disposal project, SSDD. And Mike Lang is here if there are questions about sludge, commonly known as sludge, or that. You may hear it called biosolids or solids, but it's the sludge that's generated. We're getting a few other suggestions up front. The working estimate on that project is approximately $8.8 million, and I think the discussion we've had with staff is this is not sort of it might be nice to have. It sounds like it's a gotta have type of project, and in the utility capital plan, that project is slotted in for fiscal year 24. So there's some design and engineering work that's ongoing, and correct me if there's anything wrong here. Design and engineering work that needs to be done, and then in FY24 is what the CIP currently calls for that. There was some discussion as we were working through the model with staff about should we consider borrowing for that project earlier as well under the sort of the same premise as what we just discussed. Might be moving into a higher interest rate environment. This seems like it's something that's going to happen. Granted, we're still working with estimated costs, but like any of these borrowings, I mean, we can write the authorization for the debt a certain way that gives you a little bit of flexibility. So I want to talk about the general fund. I should have mentioned this earlier. If we were to go out and request $16 million, which how do we get that number? It's 7 plus 5 plus 4. We would write the authorization and the loan documents in such a way that, if the fire station was a little more, but the animal shelter was a little less, you've got flexibility to move those dollars around. Now, at the end of the day, when these projects are ultimately bid, if you've got excess money, we're going to make sure we have a home for that, whether it's other projects or making payments on the debt. If you need more money, we would have to cross that bridge, right? And you could consider funding those out of reserves, or maybe there's another borrowing that you could do. That's just part of the reality of potentially borrowing based on estimates. There's nothing wrong with that. We just don't have bids in hand, so we need to try to give you as much flexibility in the authorization as we can to work with those dollars within those projects. And I would say, even if a project fell off the table saying we don't want to use it, I would like to think that we can write the authorization in a way that you can use those dollars for cost overruns elsewhere or other approved projects. We've done that before. The same would hold true back to the utility on the sludge project. We're using an estimate. We would propose to write it in such a way where it gives you the ability to spend those dollars on making the debt payment or some other board-approved project if the sludge project came in at a lower cost than what we're estimating. Again, 8.8. We looked at this two ways in our modeling. We looked at borrowing the full $8.8 million this spring. It could be done in concert with the general fund RFP. We looked at borrowing the 8.8 as it's scheduled out in the CIP in 2024. We used the same assumptions on debt service 20 years at 3%. If you're borrowing in the current market, if you're borrowing out a couple years, the 2024 scenario, we bump that interest rate a little bit to 4.5. I'm not suggesting the rates will be that high, but it's out there, so we wanted to be a little higher. So we looked at the full 8.8 million, or we said maybe there's some middle ground and borrow for half of the expected cost, get some of the project locked in, the debt locked in, and assess what else you might need down the road as the project cost is firmed up. Maybe you go back and do another borrowing. Maybe you decide you have enough cash within the utility system to pay cash for the balance. So in talking with staff, we could potentially add this utility project into the RFP, into the VRA application as a backup at the full 8.8 or at some lesser amount. And what we tried to do on the third page here is give you an idea of, what would it mean to the utility system if we were to do that. I know there are a number of things that we're going to be working on with the utility model going into the retreat. Rates and charges. What are we going to do? How do we handle bottoms, bridge, ad valorem? A lot of that, like we've discussed at other retreats. We have tried, for the purposes of this little example, to sort of hold the status quo on rates and charges and on the bottoms, bridge, ad valorem, not try to make any assumptions about what might get done with that, and borrow. You can see across the top, option 1 is 8.8 borrowing now, option 2 is 8.8 borrowing in 24, option 3 is 4.4 now, option 4 is 4.4 in 24. You can get a sense of the debt. We're able to demonstrate what the annual payments are on line 10, so you can see the difference in the annual payments between the 3% rate versus the 4.5% rate, the full 8.8 or the 4.4. You can see the annual payments, the total payments on 11, line 11. You will remember in the utility model, we have to demonstrate we can achieve a minimum debt coverage of 1.15 times. We can. Our cash, we always have targeted that we want on line 14 a minimum cash balance equal to at least 50% of the utility budget. In every one of these cases, we're able to do that. And you can see the type of revenue growth that we need between fiscal years 23 and 25 to maintain the integrity of the utility model. Now, what I will tell you is your utility CIP has something like 30, I think it's 30 or 40? 39 million of capital projects, right? Including the 8.8. We're only discussing the 8.8 here. So there are other projects in other years that we're going to share with you at the retreat for review and discussion. But for the purposes of this, I guess our thinking was what's really before you is, do we want to go out and solicit funding proposals for the sludge project now? Again, like the general fund, you won't be obligated to accept them, but it will at least give you an idea of what the market could do, which in turn allow us to update the utility model. But what you can see from this little snippet is the $4.4 million borrowings on option 3 and 4 does not require any additional revenue growth, so it doesn't require rate increases or system growth, but you can see your cash as a percent of your budget is a little bit lower on the line 14. Alternatively, in option 1 or 2, if you borrow the larger amount, the coverage is fine. You have greater cash because you're fully funding the project with debt, not using cash. But all things being equal, we would expect to see the need for some revenue growth out in fiscal years 24 and 25 to make it work. You may well have that revenue growth, and that number is going to change a little bit when we add in all those other capital projects, and that will be the subject of discussion at the retreat. So this is really just trying to isolate the sludge and get a little bit of direction from you all if you want to put that sludge project on the table for potential financing. It could be incorporated into the general fund, RFP, and VRA scenario, 8.8 4.4 or somewhere in between. But again, it would be a couple of years earlier than where that project shows up on the CIP. So let me stop there and maybe questions.
Maybe, Mike, can you come up and give us, in layman's terms, a brief reason for the need for this project or what it's actually going to be doing?
We currently haul the sludge. Brockwell's has a contract to haul the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant. We do not have, other than separating the water from the solids, we do not have a process to handle the sludge. They pump it into a tanker, haul it away. Average cost currently about $1,000 a day, and increasing as we continue to add new subdivisions in the farms of New Kent, new users in Brickshire. Everything here at the courthouse is on the sewer system,
So this is going to allow you to we won't have to use Brockwell anymore. It's going
on the hauling, correct. We still do get services from Brockwell's on some cleanings and that sort of thing. The problem with hauling the sludge is nobody wants it. So we have an agreement with Henrico, kind of loosely attached to the jail contract, that they will take it. HRSD is the backup for them in Williamsburg at a longer hauling distance and a higher disposal cost. But both of them have indicated that we need to find another outlet for the sludge.
So this is going to be going to landfill?
This will be dried. Final destination not determined. As we discussed at the retreat, we want to find a long-term disposal option. We don't want to be cut off. So that's part of our meeting tomorrow with the engineers. They have a third party that goes out and knows the market for sludge disposal and will find us someone that will take it, for the next 25, 30 years. So ultimately, we would be treating it on our own. It would go into a dumpster, something like that, or directly into a dump truck, perhaps, and be hauled away as needed. And it's pretty, I will add, it's pretty standard part of the treatment process at wastewater and water treatment facilities.
So how much, since we're still going to be hauling it away, obviously you're going to be significantly reducing the weight by removing the water.
Correct. Most of the water.
How often are you going to be hauling it away? You're saying $1,000 a day now. What are we going to be reducing that amount by?
Don't know that answer yet. We don't have a design. We don't know the process, and we don't have a design. We haven't even shipped a sludge sample for analysis. So. Okay. And that would all be part of the engineering that we're doing, embarking upon this year.
Is there any way to kind of estimate what we're looking at? I mean, just because we're kind of looking at trading costs here, and I'm just wondering.
I don't know. What do you think, Larry?
I mean, we could talk about it later. I just think it would be nice to
an estimate. What are our hauling and tipping fees for garbage, regular garbage? Any idea?
You can't compare it
Yeah,
to
it's
garbage.
different for.
The key here is the fact that Enrico's telling us we need to find another spot. HRSD does not want it. We have nowhere to take it at its current form. If we dry it, we got multiple landfills that will accept it. If sludge land application becomes an option, we have those options. But the current option is going away. We have to do something. The next nearest place we think we may, and the guy said we think, is Hopewell. And the distance there is a lot farther now. So it's a distance and wait times, and people don't want it. It's just they just don't want it.
All right. Anybody else? So you're going to meet with some people that possibly take it. Worst case scenario is going to landfill. Is what it amounts to. And you're going to try. Okay.
Correct. I think the message is clear that spreading it on the fields isn't going to be applicable here in New Kent. So landfilling.
No, I don't want no. Last time I
We
was
don't
on the
wanna get
news,
into
I don't
that
need any more
again.
flies.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anything additional?
Anybody else? All right.
And I will emphasize what Ted said, you know, RFP or inquiries with VRA, all of that is non-binding at this point. So really we're exploring options on financing the project.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything? You got anything else to add?
No, that's all.
Any board members have any questions for Mr. Cole? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short recess. 5 minutes. We'll make it 10. Yeah, I'll get too shaky up here. All right. All right, let's move on to item 9, consideration of purchase for 4.77 acres in Lenexa for construction of fire station to replace fire station number 4. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. In your package, you have a copy of a purchase agreement. Actually, I've just received the purchase agreement from the realtor yesterday, and I apologize. It is not in your packet. But we've discussed this purchase of 4.77 acres. I have a map in your packet of where the property is located for the site of Fire Station 4, which we've been talking about this morning as far as upcoming capital projects. The property is located at the corner of Waterside Drive and Route 60. Many of you may remember that property as the site of the old R&D International Motel. International Motel, actually, was the name of that. I've been talking with the realtor. Our attorney, we were given a draft agreement. Our attorney has made some edits that has been reviewed by the realtor, and I just got that document back and got word from them that they were in agreement with the edits that we've made. There is a 60-day closing requirement in the edit for a purchase price at $325,000. We've already engaged a closing attorney. We feel comfortable that we can meet that 60-day requirement. I am seeking authorization to enter into a purchase agreement with No Bear Crawling LLC. And I lay out the tax map parcels as well, which there are 3 parcels and a portion of 1, totaling 4.77 acres. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions?
And so, we're trying to do financing for the fire station, but we're saying that this land is being purchased for the fire station, and the CIP has a proposal for the fire station. So we're committing ourselves to the fire station without committing ourselves to the fire station.
Well, we're saying that this is the preferred site for a fire station, and it may end up that it's not going to be built next year. It might be several years out, but when we get to building it, we're saying this is the preferred site, and we're securing it now. But, I mean, we are proposing, and in my CIP recommendation, we are proposing to move forward with the construction too. But that will come back to you for your decision later.
I like the location. I think that it better supports part of my district, and as well as Mr. Lockwood and Mr. Steers' district, or what was part of my district, or who knows? Who knows? So that part of the county, let's just say that. I think that if we had used the other property, it's so close to James City County that I think, their support and helping what needs there. But then this, for me, if you watch the apparatus when it leaves this seat and it goes back over there, they come right through Waterside anyway, and then we're closer to the colonies and the Providence Forge area. So I just think that in that area, the site makes sense for us, and we can fund it without borrowing the site.
Yes. We do not have to borrow for the purchase of this site. we would use a capital fund balance to purchase this.
Mr. Steers, you have something?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In looking at the map, Mr. Hathaway,
Yes.
I know the main part of that property, TM 45-29B. I'm sure that's probably where the structure would go.
Yes.
What all these other properties back here, 45-29, 29C, D, B, is all that going to be landlocked to where you couldn't use that for anything else?
No, we could still utilize that property, with that portion of the property, and we may have to utilize some of that for stormwater management facilities. But definitely there would be additional land that would give us some options in the future. We don't have a use for it right now.
Could we possibly use a portion of that for an animal shelter?
We would have to do some site design to see how much we actually need for Fire Station 4 and see what's left. And then see what the requirements are for the animal shelter. It's a possibility. I'm just a little hesitant because the layout of the configuration of the lots are kind of weird. But we can definitely look into that.
You know, and that may not be a good idea because I don't know if you want animals being housed next to a fire station with all the sirens and stuff going off, you know.
Well, I can tell you there's two trains of thought right now with the animal shelter. One, we're talking to Henrico County now to utilize some land that the county actually owns, but we're into a long-term lease with Henrico County, and that's the site of the Henrico Jail East. There's enough land to put a facility there too. I am also looking at land in the western portion of the county. The reason being is we really need another trash transfer site in the county. Everybody knows the status of 612, and that is at capacity and has no room to expand there. And it would be nice if we could find another piece of property in the western portion of the county that could accommodate both needs, the trash transfer site as well as the animal shelter. So those are two trains of thought right now.
Also, Mr. Chairman, the two acres we bought down by Liberty Church.
Yes.
That was the proposed site. Could that be used as an animal shelter?
You know, that could. I mean, that is a possibility. I would like, if we pursue that, I think we should have a conversation with the church to be good neighbors and make sure, you know, that they wouldn't have any objections or concerns. But the soils on that site are good.
It's flat. It wouldn't take a whole lot of site work.
It wouldn't take a lot of site work.
Would 2 acres be adequate?
Depends on if you live next door to it.
I would certainly think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I do think it would. I'm not an engineer. Haven't laid out, and I'll probably have a better understanding of what's required after the sheriff's tour of looking at other facilities in the region. But I definitely think that should be an option. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Steers, we're getting some preliminary engineering done on the site just to see what can be done there. So I think the staff has reached out to an engineering firm.
Yes.
To get some pretty.
Yep.
Mr. Lockwood?
Yeah, I just would like to concur with Ms. Page that I think that, you know, the 2 acres that were set aside previously, and after talking to Chief Opet, you know, it wouldn't really be the best site for what we're trying to do there. And I think the location of this, moving it a little further into the county, is definitely a preferred option. So I think it's a good choice and could improve response times to the other end of the county when they're called out for support. So I definitely think it's a good location.
I've been down to the Fire Station 4 3 or 4 times over the last year, and firefighters were having some issues with the flooring, and we actually went underneath that building, and obviously that is, to me, I think Fire Station 4 needs to be replaced. That would be my number one concern on that end. We need to to update that for sure. And I do think that the location, like you all stated, is great. Anything else on that? Anybody have any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the county administrator to execute a purchase agreement with No Bear Crawling LLC in a form approved by the county attorney for the purchase of tax map parcels 45-29C, 45-29D, 45-32B, and a portion of 45-29B, totaling 4.77 acres with a purchase price not to exceed $325,000.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Any comments? Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next item is New Elim Baptist Church recognition. Ms. Page?
Mr. Chairman and rest my fellow board members, I am requesting a resolution for a New Elim Baptist Church during the time of pandemic, and New Elim was able to secure box food and distribute it throughout the county and surrounding locations. I'm thinking Mr. Steers attended one of their drive-through food box programs, and they did it for about 9 months. And if it fell on a Saturday where it was raining or it was cold or it was hot, they were still out there on Saturday morning making sure that especially our older residents, but those, and they said you didn't even have to be in need if you wanted it. So for those that, you know, had a fear of going out to shop or couldn't get out, they provided these food boxes. And I mean, if they just, it was well organized. Our sheriff's department at one time or several times had to come out and direct traffic because there's so many people, and they distributed over 30,000, like 32,000, 31,000 boxes of food. And I mean, if you try throwing these boxes of food at 30 pounds, 32 pounds, it's a workout. And that's the closest thing to exercise that I did all that year, I'm gonna tell you. But just the appreciation of the community, and I mean, they solicited the help of forklifts from Ace Hardware, and just had so many that were involved in this. And I would just be appreciative of if our board would recognize New Elim. We talk about the churches stepping up to the plate and being seen in the community, and surely they did this for so many.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Page.
And I would like to do a presentation to the church at our February meeting, Mr. Chairman, if possible.
Is everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, I could comment on that.
Yes, sir.
I know that New Elim dropped off several boxes a lot of Saturdays at Proclaiming Grace Outreach, just for anybody that wanted them, needed them to pick up and take home. And you know, there was a lot of times where I saw a couple of people brought to tears to accept that gift that they weren't expecting to be available to them. So it's just a wonderful thing what they were able to accomplish. So I think it's a great way to recognize their efforts.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if no other comments, I move to approve Resolution R-03-22 recognizing New Elim Baptist Church for their outstanding community service during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next are appointments not delegated by district. Mr. Lockwood, you got?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Dora Turgeon as an at-large representative to the Board of Road Viewers to complete a term ending December 31st, 2024.
Anyone else? Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members on appointments not delegated by districts?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next, appointments of regional boards and commissions.
So, Mr. Chairman, the reason that this is on our agenda is because according to the charter and the bylaws of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, the current chair becomes a member or the representative at the CVTA, or the chair has the authority to appoint a designee to represent the locality. And so that was the need for this.
And I'll
for
be
this
more than
appointment.
happy to reappoint you to that. It would take me a year to learn all those acronyms. I move to appoint Patricia A. Page as designee to the board chair, for board chair Thomas W. Evelyn to serve as New Kent's representative to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2024, I think it's supposed to read, not 2022.
That's a 1 year. It's a 1
So
year.
it ends
Oh,
December
2022. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. Sorry. December 31st, 2022. Ms. Watkins, will you poll them up?
Are we
Ms.
doing
Page?
Are we doing Amy at the same time?
Amy, too,
Okay.
for, Plan RVA.
Do you want to do that?
I can. Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Amy Pearson as New Kent's Planning Commission representative to Plan RVA to serve a one-year term ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Craig Pierce to the Parks and Recs Advisory Commission for a 3-year term.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Other business, I think we have a couple things. Mr. Smolik, you want to come up first with the tourism? Oh, yeah. Too much coffee. I'm moving too quick. Just sit down and enjoy yourself for a minute, Matt. Next, we'll do the nominations for the Board of Equalization. Does anybody have any? Ms. Lockwood?
Mr. Chairman, I move to nominate Maurice Gauthier for Circuit Court appointee as a member of the Board of Equalization to serve a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I move to nominate Matt Starr for the Circuit Court appointment as a member of the Board of Equalization to serve a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Amy Pearson as a member of the Board of Equalization for a year ending December 31st, 2022.
All right.
I got crazy.
All right, Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. That Board of Equalization does have to have one real estate agent on it, isn't that correct?
30% must be
Okay. All right, other business?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have Matt Smolik here this morning to talk about ARPA funds that New Kent will be receiving specifically for the use of tourism.
Sure, thank you. So, with our recognition as a destination marketing organization up at the Visitor Center, we are eligible and we were awarded $40,000 in ARPA funds to assist with the recovery for tourism across the Commonwealth. Now, I know Richmond Region Tourism was here. How's that? Is that better? Okay, thank you, thank you. So, Richmond Region Tourism, GRP, and Chamber RVA looking to do a region-wide marketing blitz. The funds to fund this marketing campaign would require all the ARPA funds from all the participating localities in Richmond Region Tourism. There's going to be some ongoing costs, but that's another story. But ARPA funds need to be expended no later than December of 2023. So we've got almost 2 years to spend these funds. We received a request from Richmond Region Tourism a couple days ago. It was an authorization letter turning over the $40,000 that's allocated to New Kent County towards the regional tourism plan. So my question for you as a board is, I've got, over the last couple of weeks, and then this goes back to November when Richmond Region Tourism was here, specifically talked to the representatives after the meeting and said, I have a project that I have in mind. This is my priority, and we talked about this at the EDA meeting. We've since interviewed 5 different marketing firms in the Richmond area. I've gotten back 4 different quotes for to update, print, and distribute that new region-wide or the county-wide tourism brochure. One quote come in at $14,500, $17,000. This one's doesn't have photography. That's right at $10,000. The other's at $18,400. So looking at these quotes we received, half the ARPA funds are going to be eaten up with just this one project. I have till December of 2023 to figure out how to spend these funds. So my question for the board: are you willing to relinquish the $40,000 of ARPA funds for the region-wide tourism plan, or would you rather spend these internally here? And some of the concern through Richmond Region Tourism is, well, Matt, if you don't put in all your funds, then the other localities, they may look at it and says, well, I'm not going to put in all my funds. Yeah. So I've Ms. Page was at the EDA meeting last week, as was Mr. Hathaway, and we had this discussion. I figured it'd be beneficial for the entire board to kind of hear where we're at, and and I'll do whatever you want me to do, but and that's open for discussion at this point.
Any discussion? Ms. Page?
Mr. Chair, I asked Matt to bring this before the whole chair. It wasn't a Ms. Page decision. I can tell you that at the EDA meeting, there were several things I discussed. The figures that you gave us are for how many brochures?
It varies. I think printing is really, what I'm finding is printing is not that big of a cost. With one of them, to print 10,000 brochures, $1,100. To print 50,000 is $2,075. So the majority of this cost is, it's anywhere between 5,000 and 50,000 brochures in these figures.
So when we look at the proposal that Mr. Smolnick received, those proposals don't include if we have changes to our brochure. So different setups, and this is just for 1 year, but it's going to 13 different sites. I'm not in favor of giving you my money and then asking you, can I have my money back to buy some of the things that I need to buy when I already have my own money? I mean, to me, that makes no sense. But the other part, even further, is if we turn over our funding, then we had a presentation back in December, I believe it was, where we had the presentation containing some of the same things that we saw when I first became a board of supervisor. So if we also had meetings with Richmond Regional Tourism about updating of our website. I mean, why do we have to go to an organization that we pay to belong in? This year we'll be paying around $30,000 just to be a member of Richmond Regional Tourism, and then we're going to give you additional $40,000 so that we can come and ask you, can we have our money to spend on the things that we need on? I don't think, I'm not in favor of that. I think that we would be better suited. Matt knows what we can and cannot spend that money for, and he has a very creative bunch, including himself, staff, not bunch, staff that can absolutely, I think, come up with very creative ways of how we can promote New Kent County through our use of the other welcome centers. And so I'm in favor, if we have money left before the deadline of December 2023, that then we turn it over to Richmond Regional Tourism. But I don't think it becomes our responsibility of how it looks if we don't include this amount of money. I don't. That's just my take on it.
I would agree. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would tend to agree as well that, we're already paying a membership for them to promote New Kent County, and I think that if we do things on our own in addition to that, that only helps benefit the county. So by turning those funds over, I think it might even dilute what we would be capable of doing ourselves. I think unless there's something I'm missing about what Richmond Regional Tourism could do specifically with that amount of money to promote New Kent, I don't see where it benefits us at all.
And in the statement that they put out at the meeting the other day, it was very clear that it would not. It's something about it wouldn't be advertised or equally. So it's based on population and the number of events you have and the number of hotels you have. I mean, and so we fall far out of that league with that. So we have to be very creative of how we promote our own county.
I say keep it in-house.
I don't think we need to vote on that. Is that the consensus of the board?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm. Next, Chief Opet.
You did good in the board meeting, but you're not doing it good in this session.
I know.
The agenda just keeps on giving.
All right, Chief.
All right. Once again, good morning, almost afternoon. I wanted to bring forth to you an opportunity that's out. We're all familiar with the SAFER grant, but they released the SAFER, but after reading the notice of funding opportunity, I didn't want the board to miss out this opportunity on some of the things that they're doing. If you turn to the next page, the SAFER facts this year for the notice of funding opportunity. Whereas in the past, they've usually maintained about a $350 million pot for this and only 300 awards. This year, and it's kind of a shorter turnaround, is they've got $560 million available. My assumption is that some relief funds got put into this by Congress. So they're looking at 500 awards, which is a significant increase of $205 million. Next page here, it's the period of performance. Obviously, the grant actually is due on February 4th. And they would award around June 1, which is, again, a really short pull for them, which leads me to believe they have this money, this extra money that really needs to get out. Yeah. So what's kind of driving this here? Obviously, the opportunity, and also there's no match. This is the first year I've heard of this, that there's absolutely no match at all for this grant for 3 years. So it's free money for 3 years, no percentage increase like our current SAFER. If you remember our current SAFER, we have 75% federal funds and a 25% match, and then that increments down the opposite way after year 3. This year there's zero match whatsoever for the 3 years. And again, what's kind of driving this here is our calls for service as we see the continued growth. If you take a look at calendar year 20 to 21, we have a 16% increase in volume. And then so far to date, from January 1 to actually this was till yesterday, we're seeing already an 18% increase just in this month alone, up 280 to 237, and we still have another 6 days to go in January. If you take a look at the next slide, this has our current daily staffing of 15 on duty. That includes the last SAFER that we had to kind of get us to that standard of 15 people on shift daily. And really what it equates to is we have 7 ambulances staffed daily. What's really turning the wheels here are ambulances, folks. So I've got 2 options for you. If you choose to move forward, I've got two options. One for a SAFER grant for 15 and a SAFER grant for 18. And here's the first one of what that looks like for 15. It basically, between the two, we go from 15 a day to 20 a day for 15 if we propose 15. That puts 4 in every station with the exception of the Quinton station. It puts 3 because right now we can only house 3 a day in there based on the living arrangements in that facility. So that's why you see a 15 proposal here. But basically that puts 4, and that equates to 9 ambulances up a day in the county. Second option is for 18 new firefighters in the SAFER grant. Again, that puts 4 at every station. We would have to do some quick thinking on how we get some extra lockers at Station 2 if this is the case, for 21 on duty every day. And that equates to 10 ambulances pretty much available in the county every day. We do. Yeah. So when you take a look at the budget for this, for 15, that comes in at $1,079,506. And that is your base salary plus any EMS incentives and your benefits. So this is a total loaded cost annually for the 15. The fiscal impacts of this for 15, if you take a look in fiscal year 23, there's no impact to us. We would be only utilizing a half a year of that. We have 180 days upon our award to hire the folks and get them on board. So we would be only utilizing 6 months of that grant. In FY24, we would be utilizing the full amount, but there's no impact to New Kent County. FY25, again, the full amount and no impact to New Kent County. In FY26 would be the first fiscal impact. It looks like it's going to be a half year's worth at about $539,000, which is about a 1.5 cent, and I based that on kind of dividing what we heard today of the $400,000 worth, a penny is worth $400,000 to the current rate, and you come kind of to $363,000 per penny, and that's kind of what that came up with. And in FY27 is when we take on the full gamut of those firefighters, which is an additional 1.5 cents, or totality of 3 cents for the whole project when it's put in our lap. For 18, the budget increases to almost 1.3 million, 1.92,894. And again, the impacts there's no impacts in 23, 24, or 25. The impacts again occur in FY26 for a half a year, which is 1.78 cents on that calculation, and then FY27 is the full impact of additional 178 for a total of 3.5 cents based on that average going forward. The next packet I'm not going to go through. This is for your leisure. This is kind of the data and stats that's kind of driving everything right now, and where you see some performance indicators there. If you'd like me to go over it quickly, I will. If not, this will be for your leisure. But
I think we're good.
Okay.
That's everybody.
What you see when you're looking, the last 2 pages in that package is kind of the mid to long-term goals of where I see it going on the current growth route. Our current cross-staffing model is a challenge daily right now, just because of those multiple calls coming in back to back. Already, as of this morning, since 8 o'clock, we've already up to 7 calls, and we're already through just the morning. And a couple of those were back to back. So that's what we're kind of seeing now is the new trend. That whole Talliesville Road, and I'll back up from 155 and west. We're just running the wheels off ambulances right now. Farms in New Kent is definitely is where we're seeing a lot of those wheels turn right now, and in the Bottoms Bridge area. So here's an opportunity. Like I said, I have a short poll time. If you'd like me to write for this, we got about 9 days to get this grant in. But I wanted to bring the opportunity to you because of the parameters in this year's grant process.
Anybody got any questions for Chief? I assume that, the safer grants probably happen again next year as well.
Oh yeah, every year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are they typically?
So they're normally 3. However, the match, what we normally see is the 25% match the first 2 years, and then a 75% match in year 3. That's what our current one is, and that is the current standard. My assumption is they're trying to give this extra $205 million out quickly and move it. That's my assumption.
Is your total staff roughly 50?
Right now, 51, and includes all the administrative staff.
That's everything.
Yeah. 45 in the field. Well, no, more than that, because there's only 3 of us. So do the math. 51 minus 3, 48 in the field.
Yeah, 45.
I'm just trying to.
Because you have 15 on shift.
15 on shift. Mm-hmm. And that includes the operations chief, Chief Bennett, Chief Baber, myself, Elim.
Anybody? You got any comments?
I guess my only comment is that I think Mr. Steer said it's free money for 3 years. You hate to get it and then not use it. But again, if we can get that much more staff, that many more on staff, and it's not gonna cost us anything for 3 years, I think it's a good idea personally, but that's just me.
Mr. Chair, so you feel pretty confident that if you applied for it, we would get it, right?
I think at any grant, I put one over the fence and see what happens. With all the indicators, we are still a very well-written grant will probably be very well scored, just because we don't meet all the high priorities that they're looking for on a day-to-day basis. So we'll be a high priority grant, yes.
And my other question is, when it will be the next time that the county is reevaluated for the insurance purposes?
We were supposed to do it last fall, but COVID kind of put a damper on that. So we're looking at potentially this fall, moving forward.
This fall. And if we had these extra people on staff, that would potentially bring people's
Matter of
homeowners
fact,
insurance
one
down.
of the lowest areas we scored in is a deployment of people because of our cross-staffing. We would certainly score better in that deployment for the ISO. And we can push that off till they get in place. But that would certainly, again, help that score for deployment.
And would that be countywide?
Yes. We are getting a countywide, the next one is a countywide assessment. Because if you remember, the last one was done based on the old volunteer breakups. So this one going forward is going to be the one countywide number.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've had two constituents, and when they talked about getting the whole house replacement insurance, and it went up because of where they're located from a fire hydrant. But anyway, I think that free ain't free, and so I think that we have to look at as well. We have a salary study that's out that we haven't gotten any information on. We have minimum wage salaries that are going up. I think that we have to consider that as well. I mean, if we compare it to where we are right now, I think that if we were there in 3 years, then we could say, hey, this is a really good deal. But right now we don't even know what salaries are going to look like once we complete this study. That's one thing. The other thing is we don't know how, or I don't know how, when we bring minimum wage up, because we do have people that are working minimum wage, quite a few as a matter of fact, how that's going to affect us as a county. So I just ask that we consider those costs as well. And I mean, we've seen our penny go up, but we've also seen how assessments can go down in the housing market as well. So I just ask that you consider that.
I guess my concern is how many firefighters have we put in place in the last 3 years?
In the last 3 years, it would have been 12, the new safer in the last 3 years. The 12 in the last.
And I think the response times have gone down. Y'all have done a good job. I know we don't get as many NOU or NUA because you just keep us on that.
Yep.
My concern is, I mean, I agree it's free money, but in 3 years you're going to have to come up with this money. And when we're preparing for the future, we know we have needs of staff here. The Commissioner's office, everybody told us during our retreat that, they're understaffed. Everybody needs help. Public utilities. I mean, it's all throughout. So once we lock into this, I would feel better pushing it to another year. So when we get the salary study done like we did, so we can prepare a little bit more in the future. Because, I mean, I'm not saying you don't need, I'm sure you do, but I just would have a little concern with waiting for the salary study. I mean, staff was on us pretty hard about need more help throughout all the departments. And that's just my take on it.
So there's no reason why we couldn't do fewer than 15 though, is there? I mean, just if we're just talking strictly by numbers, I mean, as call volume goes up, proportionately, you would think staffing is required to go up.
I would not recommend it for a strong proposal. And the reason I say that is these are graded strongly on the NFPA 1710 standard. And you have to make that argument of what this does. So our number, now that we've grown to 12, the 12 plus the 51, that number to move to that high priority of where there's 4 persons. Basically, the argument that we would do is there's now 4 persons per engine in the county, and that gets you your high priority. Okay, so that's what that math is. So anything below that is going to be probably rated at a medium or lower priority through their eyes. So that it wouldn't be worth writing the grant because knowing that's a medium priority. Not that we're trying to build a lot. That's the way they grade those.
They would look at it as, I guess, as a not as great a need.
Yeah, what they do, they grade it on the amount of percentage. So the grant is, when you write it, the highest percentage to get you to that 91 to 98% of rolling out the door on meeting the 1710 standard. That's in the notice of funding opportunity that they put out. So that's where those numbers come from. It's generated on what's going to give you the best application moving forward. They don't fund anything below a medium priority.
And I understand what you guys are saying about the increase in salaries, but Mr. Hathaway, haven't you already set aside a certain amount of money for salary adjustments?
No, sir.
I thought you said you had set aside.
The salary study, we do not have, the only funding that the board has set aside right now is capital funding. That's one-time expenditures at all. And we would never put one-time expenditures towards salary. In order to cover an ongoing operating cost, those would have to come out of our annual budget, our general fund, which could result in a required tax increase. Now, we do anticipate a significant amount of growth in the next budget too, and we're looking at those numbers as well. We don't have it finalized yet as far as revenues for next fiscal year. And we would like to set aside that growth for the salary adjustments, but we don't have a number at this point.
Okay, I was under the impression you said you had set aside money for salary adjustments.
No, I've set aside money for the actual study because that's a one-time expenditure, and that we use capital funds for that.
Okay, thank you. My misunderstanding.
And that's kind of my point. Every budget we look at, we're gonna have to take into account that $1.2 million, or 1.1. I mean, if we're gonna have to, if we got to raise taxes to cover it, that's what it'll be. If that's what,
And if we proceeded to, I'm not sure if we would want to wait till the 3rd year to do a 3% tax increase. I would probably recommend an incremental increase, maybe starting with 0.5% this year, so it's not the sticker shock when we get to year 3. But that's something we could look at in budgeting.
Mr. Chairman. And with that being said, instead of the rate going from, 79 to 66, this to me would be the ideal time to start that.
Well, your tax bill's the same. The rate might go down, the percentage might go down.
I'm just saying.
You're still getting the same tax bill or higher.
And that equates to raising taxes.
Yes,
it does.
Exactly. That's what that was the point I was trying to make. You'd said maybe down the road, instead of doing a 3% increase in 1 year, gradually do it. That's what I said. This year, to me, is a golden opportunity, even if you did it 1 cent, because the penny's already worth over $400,000. Why not start now when you've got the opportunity, instead of a 13-cent decrease, make it a 12-cent decrease, and use that penny to go towards that and then maybe next year
But that's
down the road.
that'd be a 1 cent increase.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
It's amazing how no one ever talks about a decrease.
I'm trying to help y'all talk about it now, obviously.
Anybody have anything else?
I do share the concern about future increases in payroll costs. I mean, we know what's coming. I mean, we might not have a number, but we know what's coming. And to couple that with, a future known increase, it would concern me to not know what that number is, for us to kind of push the envelope. I think that maybe next year's grant application, at least then we would have some indication of what we're looking at on the other side.
I really think, I mean, I take pride, and I think we all should, on being fiscally responsible for what we've done. I mean, we're looking at a $16 million borrowing next year, the salary study, and getting all the figures and facts in front of us before we make these decisions. I think I would agree with you, Ms. Lockwood. So, I guess, do we need a motion or consensus, or?
Yeah, I think.
What do you think, Brendan?
Just consensus. Yeah, just consensus.
What do you want to? Should we make a motion, or? All right. Anybody got a motion?
I make the motion that we approve Rick Opet's request for safer funds for an additional 15 firefighters by February, and the first year impact physically on the county would be in 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steers. Any discussion? Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
No.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
No.
And Mr. Evelyn?
No. All right.
Exactly. Mr. Hathaway, I don't know if it's a clarification in the land for Station 4. All 4 of those, I believe, add up, if I'm not mistaken, closer to 7 acres.
I was thinking 7 too. I didn't want to say anything.
I believe.
All 4 parcels add up to 7, but on one parcel, we're just purchasing a part of that. And in the agreement, it specifically says 4.77 acres. Remember that last parcel, one is on one side of Waterside, the other is on the other side of Waterside. And it's a pretty good size of land. We'll double check that.
Yeah, those back 2 or 3 acres each. The L-shaped is 3 acres, and the one in front of that is 3 acres, based on our GPS.
Okay.
I was going to mention that, but
That's something we will verify definitely with the realtors and attorney to make sure that we have the right amount in the purchase agreement.
Change the motion that we need to make, though? I mean,
No, you specifically listed the parcel numbers and the price, and you've given me authorization to sign a purchase
up
agreement.
to that. So, I mean, we do have.
I
some
think you're
negotiation
okay,
room.
but
Yeah, I think we're fine. It's just if we do need to only buy a portion of a parcel, they'll have to ultimately subdivide that and create
Yes.
a new parcel for us. So,
yes. And that's understood, but we also need to check the acreage in the purchase agreement too to make sure that that's correct.
yes.
Thank you.
That's what I remember. Thanks, Chief.
So even though the fact that we stated the
Hot mic.
total acreage
Mr. Lockwood, if you guys are okay with it, let's amend the motion up to that acreage, just so we're clear.
I'm sure the contract. Okay.
If you guys are okay with that, I'm okay as is. But if you want to clarify it for the record, then that's all it would take.
I think you're legal. You're buying those legally.
Yeah, the
parcel
parcels are
numbers
what they are.
Yeah, that parcel,
And they're identified.
but it's up to
in
the board,
motion.
however they feel.
Yeah, the only thing is we didn't identify the portion of the parcel that we're not buying the whole parcel. We didn't identify how many acres that was of that parcel.
That's correct. It's in the motion. We just said a portion of, we didn't identify. Right.
If we're good, I'm fine. I just want to make sure if there isn't some point of clarification that we need to make.
It's up to, I'll have to ask advice from the county attorney what we need.
Members, I think we're good, although it's clear to me that we do need to clarify some things, so I need to look at that.
Yeah, it says in there, map parcel, and it says totaling 4.77 acres with the purchase price not to exceed $325.
How about we amend it to plus or minus 4 point?
Somewhere between 4.77 and 7 acres.
Plus or minus.
Let's do that motion now, so in case we need to go up to the 7, we at least have that authority.
All you would is need plus or minus, right?
It's not minus, would it? Would be minus 4.77.
How about at least 4.7?
That works. That works.
It's over more than 7.
You want it up to 7?
Yeah. Well, could we amend the motion
and just
Can we say-
remove
just
the
reference the tax map?
and remove the total acreage? Does that matter?
Or could we do it to include just the price and?
I think you need to include the tax map number.
The motion,
Right.
Then the
But
motion.
they don't. But the tax map that doesn't include the property across the street, does it?
No, but the motion included the parcels.
So we're good, right?
So we're
I
good.
think we're good.
Right, we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Y'all just want to get out of here.
I got a motion.
Uh-oh.
To adjourn.
All right, anything else on other business? All right. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, February 14, 2022, and the next work session at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, February 23, 2022, both in the boardroom of the County Administration Building. The board will also hold a budget retreat at 9 a.m. on February 28th with the location to be determined. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the member?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Adjourn.
Whew. I thought we was gonna stay here until the board meeting.
Huh?
I thought we